Hello, and welcome to the final event in our series of PharmaLedger webinars. My name is Martin Hunt, and I'm the Global Marketing Manager for Onorach Clinical, and I'm a member of the Communication and Dissemination team for the PharmaLedger project. The series of webinars have been designed to communicate and foster a greater understanding of PharmaLedger's activities amongst its members and the general public. And in this final webinar, we're going to explore the last three use cases, which combined seek to leverage patient centricity through the application of blockchain technology in clinical trials. In detail, we're going to hear from Natalia Sofia from Merck Sharp & Dohme, who'll talk about the existing eConsent landscape, and then from Baldwin Mack of Boehringer Ingelheim and Todd Culverwell from UCB, who will explore the remote clinical trials ecosystem. Xenia Beltran from UPM will then discuss Internet of Things before we hear a reflective insight from Francesca Rocchi from OPBG Hospital. Our presentations will be followed by a live Q&A with the speakers, and you can use Slido to post questions to the speakers at any time during the presentations. So if you scan the QR code that you'll see displayed on the screen, you can use that to post questions or to vote up a question that someone's already asked. And we'll take all of the questions at the end of the final presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Natalia to kick things off. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Martin. What I will be covering today is a high-level overview and introduction to blockchain-powered clinical trial ecosystem and why forging strategic partnerships is a key moving forward. So, in PharmaLedger, the mission is to integrate clinical trial workflows anchored in blockchain with a full assurance of clinical data integrity. So, the idea is that we will enable a future where clinical trials will become safer, smarter, and more efficient, and patient-led by design, by really enabling this patient centricity element. So the key stakeholders, from sponsors to site to patient, as you can see also from your screen, will act as critical partners within the clinical trial setup, along with a blockchain-enabled clinical trial platform, which eventually will promote and create an interconnected environment. So among others, the main benefits that blockchain implementation can bring is data integrity and auditability by having a blockchain secured and tamper-resistant trails of clinical trial documents and data, efficiency and compliance with generation of clinical metrics that will allow them to automate and assert clinical trial workflows, interoperability with simple integration among different systems, and last but not least, a simple and always available ecosystem where users can securely access the ecosystem utility for any part of the world with any device, anytime. So where we stand right now is, as you can see here on the short term, that from a strategic perspective, we are collaborating within a closed consortium. We have pilot projects with mock data, but also with patient data. And we experiment within that environment. From a product perspective, we have been developing within PharmaLedger different clinical trial use cases, such as the pilot e-recruitment, eConsent, IoT, and personalized medicine. And our vision, our goal, at least for the medium term, is literally to enable and create systems that can scale with permission stakeholders and that can handle and process large volumes of critical and sensitive information, such as patient data. And this vision, in order to be materialized, is really, really important and can come to life via the trial management platform. And the remote trial management solution incorporates three main functionalities under the concept of plug and play. We have the e-recruitment that matches patient with clinical trials accurately based on their health data, medical history, and location preferences. But also eConsent, which is a digital solution for clinical trial conduct that will enable automation of processes by leveraging blockchain technology and dynamic consent for data collection and use, as well as IoT medical device and personalized medicine that will provide a dynamic acquisition and processing of the data from the patient to medical devices. And in that way will accelerate clinical development, but also lead the way to remote patient monitoring. Both those two solutions will be explained into details further on in this webinar. And with that being said, I would like to hand over to Baldwin to continue with the eConsent use case.
So thank you, Natalia. For this next section, we're going to be talking about the use cases that we've been working on in PharmaLedger around blockchain-enabled trust and transparency in clinical trial management and data flow. And I'll be presenting together with Todd Culver from UCB Biosciences. So let me begin and explain to you, go through a couple of slides to talk about why we're exploring blockchain technology in clinical trials. And then we'll talk about the combined efforts of the three use cases, eConsent, IoT, and personalized medicine. And Todd is going to walk you through a demonstration of what we've developed so far. So Natalia introduced the use cases within PharmaLedger earlier, and there are 4 use cases that cover the health data and clinical trial space. This includes the personalized medicine, clinical trial recruitment, medical device or IoT, and eConsent. And the goal of these use cases were really to create a blockchain-based end-to-end clinical trial solution to accelerate clinical development. It was recognized really early on that eConsent was an enabling aspect of all of these use cases. And over time, as we developed these use cases, we decided to merge several of these. And so what we've done since the beginning of PharmaLedger is to combine the efforts within eConsent, medical devices or IoT, and personalized medicine. So why are we looking at these use cases in combination? Well, first of all, in clinical trials, let's take a look at what we're experiencing right now. This diagram walks through a very simplistic process flow of what a clinical trial looks like. And as most of us know, it begins really with the informed consent, getting patients to participate in a clinical trial. And once the consent is obtained, the patients are screened for eligibility. And once they're deemed to be eligible, they start undergoing procedures for data collection and subsequent analysis. This data could potentially be used for secondary data sharing. Now, many of our processes right now in clinical trials are still paper-based and involve centralized systems that require manual transfer of data and verification. And we know that this is also prone to delays, errors, because of the complexity. And adherence to the informed consent that a patient provides is of utmost importance in ensuring their rights and safety and their privacy. And any deviations to this consent has huge implications not only for the clinical trial and the integrity of that data, but to the patient themselves. This slide shows some GCP inspection findings from various health organizations, so FDA, EMA, MHRA, and Health Canada. And this is from an annual report summarizing the frequency of GCP inspection findings based on categorization. Over 50% of these GCP inspection findings are related to inadequate processes to ensure the quality of the clinical trials. Over 50% are also related to inaccuracy or incomplete clinical trial records. 5 to 10% of these GCP findings relate to compliance with the clinical trial protocol. And 2 to 7% are related to informed consent related issues. These GCP inspection findings speak to the challenges that we have in clinical trials and the impact it has to the data integrity and the rights of patient safety. Now, the use of devices to capture health data is becoming more and more common in clinical trials and also in our daily lives. These devices come in various forms, and data collected reside in different data sources. The data itself can come in different formats, such as structured or unstructured data formats, and not to mention the data models that this data is collected in. So the heterogeneity of the data of device data present several challenges. Now we have a disconnected ecosystem with different applications. This is prone to security and data breaches, and data from individuals are scattered in data silos, and there's a lack of data standards and formats. This creates time delays in updates to data. Now, there's no doubt that real-time patient health data collected through devices contains a wealth of knowledge that can enhance and inform on how to best manage a person's health condition. But we first need to overcome these current challenges that we face. And by extension, using real-world data together with EMR data is a powerful approach to more integrated healthcare. Real-world evidence and health data can be used to generate predictive models that can support and diagnosis or prognosis and allow for true personalized medicine for individuals. The challenges that we see today is the lack of transparent or direct information from individuals about the use of their data. And there's also difficulties in accessing medical records from various institutions. And this can be complex, costly, and also time-consuming. The ability to manage the collection, storage, access, and use of data, whether it's real world or within a clinical trial, from different sources in a transparent and trusted process is needed. And we believe that this can be achieved using blockchain technology. So how do we envision this to work? Let's take as an example a clinical trial. As I said, the most important component of a clinical trial is the informed consent. Without this, we do not have trial subjects and ultimately no data. Blockchain is a digital ledger that records actions and transactions, and everyone in the blockchain network has a copy of the ledger and can see when changes are made and by who. The informed consent is essentially an agreement that can be recorded on the digital ledger or the blockchain. And in a similar way, completion of procedures and collection of and analysis of samples can be recorded on the blockchain. Once on the blockchain, the audit history is inherently created. What is done is visible to everyone on this network, creating one trusted, immutable shared source of information, or trusted ledger. The information on the blockchain can be used to automate processes. For example, notification for reconsent, or immediately halting the analysis of a subject collected from analysis of data collected from a subject who withdrew their consent. And then access to sensitive data can also be controlled based on permission settings on the blockchain. This data ownership allows patients to share or unshare data if desired. And with the increasing digitization of healthcare, we see an opportunity where blockchain technology can be used to address issues we experience in clinical trials and also collection of data through devices or through real-world evidence data collection. Now, because the informed consent is an enabler of many processes in a clinical trial, our work evolved naturally towards combining the eConsent, IoT, and personalized medicine use cases to test an end-to-end process for clinical trial conduct. In the pilot that we've actually launched, we will be using consent from subjects as a directive for collection of data from a medical device. Collection of data from these devices will also be registered and tracked. Through a dynamic permissioning process, a researcher will be able to request access to the data that's collected from an individual subject. The subject will be empowered with the ability to grant permission for subsequent use of the IoT data collected during the trial. Now, we believe that blockchain technology can enable subjects to be a partner in the clinical trial by increasing the visibility of their status in the trial and by giving them the ability to decide what to do with their own data. It can also bring the clinical site efficiency by ensuring the accuracy and accessibility to information and material that they need to conduct the trial appropriately. And for sponsors, it can improve quality and compliance and bring efficiencies to trial conduct. Potentially, this can translate to time and cost savings too. It may also expand access to data for future development opportunities. So with that, I'm going to stop, and these are some spaces where you can find out more information about our project, and hopefully the readout from our pilot that we've launched this week. So there's a website, a newsletter, through webinars, through PharmaLedger, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter portals that you can access more information. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand it over to Todd to show you what we've developed so far in terms of our combined platform. Todd?
Thanks, Baldwin. Let's take a look at the application and focus on eConsent, IoT device management, and research data sharing. You can see here there are different roles that we have in the system: sponsor, site, patient, and researcher. Each participant has their own wallet and decentralized identifier, or DID. We use the DID to share information between different roles. Let's take a look at the sponsor role, where we already have a trial created called MT7. The sponsor is responsible for the eConsent files and the visit schedule files. In this example, we have a main consent and an optional eConsent for IoT. Here's the imported visit schedule from the protocol that is also visible in the interface. Returning to the trial level, let's drill into the enrolled site. You can see we already have a site assigned in the study called C7. To accomplish this, the site representative shared the site DID with the sponsor to make the connection within the application. You can see here the basic information for the site and the DID. Let's jump into the site interface now. Here's the site DID I was talking about. At the site level, you can provide a translated eConsent file based on language requirements. You can also see a preview of the consent, check the consent history, or view the visit schedule. Here's a preview of the consent form for the site view. Here you can see the version history of the optional IoT. 2 versions were utilized for this study. Let's navigate back to the consents page and then back to the trial management page. Under the subjects link, we can see our first patient is enrolling. From the consents link, you can see the mandatory eConsent has been signed by the patient and the site or healthcare professional, HCP. Let's take a look at the e-signatures at the bottom of the document. Here, the patient signature, and here, the HCP signature. You can also see the optional eConsent is unsigned. To show you how we collect the eConsent signature, let's jump into the patient role and sign the optional eConsent. Keep in mind, we use the patient DID to link to the participating site. From the mobile app view, you can see the clinical trials icon and data sharing icon. Here is the patient DID that is provided to the site. Under notifications icon, you can see a number of new notifications. One is for the new eConsent. Let's return to the dashboard and then select consent. Here is the signed main consent already completed that we saw from the site perspective. Let's sign the optional eConsent from the patient perspective. Here, the patient can view and sign or decline the consent form. The document is visible, and when ready, the patient can elect to sign or decline. Let's click Sign and Confirm. And now you can see from here, both consents have been signed. I need to refresh the screen to see the sign and decline link from the site perspective. You can see the signature date is already present for the patient, but missing for the site. Clicking Sign, and it opens up the eConsent. The button is grayed out until I scroll to the bottom, where I can see the patient eConsent already applied. I will also click Sign for the site. Now we have completed the optional eConsent process. While we're still in the site interface, let's manage our IoT devices. We have been testing Fitbits, thermometers, pulse oximeters, and blood pressure devices. Here's a list of available assigned devices. Let's return to the study and see what devices have been assigned to our enrolled patient. I can see that the patient has a Fitbit already assigned. If I wanted to assign a second device, I just need to select it from the list and click Save. I won't assign a second Fitbit, so let's just switch back to the patient app. Let's look at the data received so far from the IoT Fitbit device under View Health Data. I can see the mock data received from the IoT device for calories burned and values by day. Let's return to the patient app to view the IoT device data. From the dashboard, click on Medical Data and filter to Calories Burned and Show Data. This way, the patient can also review the collected data if desired. In our last step, the patient decides to share their data with researchers using the permissions icon. You enable or disable the data sharing from a patient point of view. Let's also allow researchers to contact the patient to utilize the clinical trial IoT data collected. From the researcher perspective, we create a new project called Calories Burned. Here are some additional details about the project, like inclusion criteria. Since the project is active, willing patients that meet the project criteria will be contacted. Back to the patient app, we can see under the notification, we have a pending request to join the Calories Burned study. Under Health Study, we see the pending invitation. Let's confirm to share the data with the researcher by clicking Confirm. Our screen updates now to show that we're participating in the study. Returning to the researcher, we complete the study and set it to closed. And with a brief justification, we set it to finalized. The results and the data links activate, and now we can view the patient data that was shared to the researcher. Note that the anonymized DID was used and not the public DID for the patient. The researcher can also send feedback to the participants and also share the final results with them. So you have seen the eConsent, IoT, and data sharing combined into one clinical trial using blockchain technology. I'd like to hand over to Xenia to discuss personalized medicine in more detail.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Baldwin. My name is Xenia Beltran from Politécnica University of Madrid. The UPM is co-leader of these use cases with UCB and Boehringer. Real-world data is generated by the data and information from clinical routine delivery, administration, electronic health records, social determinants, demographic data, medical devices, lifestyle devices, disease registries, and not from experimental settings. Increasingly, real-world data can be linked to more novel type of data, such as genomic also, or data from biobanks. And the idea is to support new developments or either biopharmaceutical products, new diagnostics or treatments. This information has the potential not only to enrich data for clinical trials and generate evidence. So-called real-world data is aiming to overcome not only this, but regulatory issues such as product approvals for diseases, okay, but also to inform and to support clinical trials, eligibility criteria, enrich trial populations based on diversity, as well as social context. In this context, IoT data coming from medical devices are also part of Internet of Things, called Internet Medical Things, and comprise medical devices, wearables, and apps that monitor patients' health and send health vital signs from patients to healthcare information systems or platforms as such, using the internet. This technology has the potential to increase real trials efficiency, improve the ability to support patients through remote monitoring and the patient journeys as such. Although this sounds really great, okay, as you can see in the bottom of the slide, there are big issues of this connected ecosystem, as also was commented previously in this webinar. Each of these devices are not only purpose-built, okay, but meaning that not only measure some specific information, like it could be glucose or activity of blood oxygen as such, but also each of these devices are connected to specific platforms that support the device. Integrating the device data to healthcare information and aiming and supporting decision-making in clinical studies, okay, aim to improve the care, but still is not easy to be integrated such the number of different platforms. So what is happening is that as data sources and number of medical devices increases, the number of information platforms also increase. As a consequence, the number of disconnected ecosystems also increase as such, having different levels of security, centralization, and access limitation. Also, disconnected traceabilities for analytics. So having these advances, okay, not only means that medical technology is better, it provides us with better tools and responsive care, but also it helps us to manage very sensitive data and health data when we are able to integrate it as such. So in this case, what we have done in PharmaLedger is that we have set together in a chained manner different use cases going from clinical trial consent to personalized medicine and taking in account IoT for decentralized clinical trial management. And the idea is that they have been created in a modular style, having a plug and play approach as such, and where each model can be used independently or in an integrated manner. With this, we have created an integrated blockchain approach, okay, that goes from eConsent to personalized medicine, being able to see the flow of the data through the blockchain, using the content in the different modules. And for example, no data is accessed on process in IoT or personalized medicine if it doesn't exist a current consent status from the patient saying that the data can be consent and can be used or can be processed as such. This is consulted in real time and enables to have the visibility of consent through the whole value chain in clinical trials, okay, and through the whole process as such. When we use the device data or when we use the clinical information or the health records from the patients as such. So we have blockchain over the through and over all the value chain as such. Having these models, okay, and having this approach in PharmaLedger has helped us to overcome several challenges. Many of them have been approached as part of the clinical trials, but besides those, okay, we also have been able to approach some other regulatory challenges, like, for example, the need of patient-reported outcomes or patient-reporting experiences that are needed before many market authorizations, the need of reaching patients easier because we are able to measure their signs, okay, or information in the background with IoT or with devices, overcome reaching measurements of patients in real life, okay, breaking the limits of actual studies, collection manners, okay, to get data to be integrated for new studies or new diagnostics, and actually how to blend IoT data with clinical data to converge in care processes and research, okay, with a common data collection and processing, always in a consented manner. So it helps us to move from a study-centric recruitments or study-centric trials as such to more patient-centric approaches where we reduce not only the patient risk, we increase the quantity of dynamic data in a way, okay, that is always consented, and actually help, okay, the patients to access and to provide the data in a manner where these new tools also are put in place, like applications and devices, in a seamless manner and an effective manner to actually blend under what is called real-world data as such. Why blockchain? When we say about the use cases that we're using and we're putting together to have the whole value chain of clinical trials or decentralized clinical trials, we are based, okay, we're based having as a mock-up an observational trial where several devices such oximeters or pulsometers, okay, or wearable devices were able to be used, okay, by one patient, having an architecture of the blockchain, okay, that will allow us to see and have the visibility of the data through the whole chain as such. Through blockchain, we wanted to add features and enrich data to be more accurate, to have the whole traceability, and actually to have transparency and visibility through all the processes that involve a decentralized clinical trial or a clinical trial as such, taking the advantage of exchanging data with the IoTs and with clinical data. We are able to integrate and to have compliance and interoperability on selected standards, like, for example, in our case was FHIR standards for this use case, connecting data from different platforms, okay, and not only data sources, but also different organizations in a decentralized manner, while enabling to have unique information and unique access through identity management, not only for patients, but also for devices as such. So actually we were able to have this kind of connection of one patient to several devices in a unique manner, having a one-to-one with each of the devices as such. Overall, the blockchain tools can help us to automate these processes and actually to have the full visibility, introducing the transparency and trustworthy of the sources, with full provenance, including real-world data, while allowing generation of evidence and, for sure, okay, patient-reported outcomes and patient-reported experience that really complete, okay, the real-world data as such in a timely manner and with traceability when all these evidences were created. We're using this architecture of digital trust ecosystem, and here has been key to have the identity management, especially when we have included all the devices and the devices traceability. As a result, we had an end-to-end healthcare data space that really, through the prototype that we have built as such, okay, have allowed us that based in what is the data sharing unit technology of the blockchain, which is agnostic to the several blockchain technologies as such, we have used identifiers to create real-world data in a way that is not only operative, but also operational for the data spaces as such, and also with high interoperability. Historic traceability is provided, data provenance, and actually not only we can do so, but we can leverage other technologies like machine learning or analytics or artificial intelligence over the data spaces as the data is standardized as such. Besides, this is a new way to share data, and this technology is currently being validated with patients and investigators to assess the usability and the potential adoption of the stakeholders so it can be scaled. We not only want that, but we also want to offer a value proposition for the different stakeholders. So I'm not going through all in this slide, but also we would like to mention that in our use cases and in our validation, we're providing important benefits to empower patients, okay, as data owners, like supporting privacy, security, and actually permissioned access and use of data as such. Not only the data can be used for the current study, but they are also allowed to provide permission, okay, for the data to be used as secondary use for further research and actually improve new treatments and new diagnostics of the different diseases. So in this way, and by generating new evidence, for them that other stakeholders, like it could be policymakers or regulators, also can benefit from this because they can use this data and the evidences to have new policy making in healthcare, but also to have evidences that are needed to support this new diagnostic or new biopharmaceutical products as such. In my view, blockchain technology is not only a technology that provides security, but also and provenance, but also it supports the integrity of real-world data, which includes or can include a lot of information from IoT devices, what are aimed for safe, to have transparent data and enrich new data sets with not only clinical data, but with social data. And this is meaningful for any medical assistance of patients in the healthcare today. We are enabled trusted ecosystem for value-based healthcare as such. With this, I would like to give the floor to Francesca from Hospital Bambino Gesù, who will provide the perspective of the clinical stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xenia, and hi everyone. I'm Francesca Rocchi. I'm a pharmacist, a pharmacologist by training, and I work in Bambino Gesù Children's Hospital in Rome, which is one of the biggest pediatric hospitals in Europe. I work in the hospital department, which is responsible for the planning, management, and implementation of clinical trial conducted within our hospital. And specifically, I deal with the regulatory setup of the study themselves. It is a pleasure for me to participate today in this webinar and to try to make some critical reflection from the point of view of the clinical side regarding clinical trials and application of new technologies such as the blockchain. So let's start with the ideal world. What is our ambition when we talk about implementing new technologies such as blockchain in clinical trials? First of all, we need to consider that subjects enroll in the study. We would like that the patient recruited in the clinical study perfectly understand what they will do in the framework of the study itself. And we would like them to have completely understood and concluded the process of the informed consent in due time. Second point, we would like the patient exchange their data in a secure way and seamlessly. And last but not least, we need to ensure that ethical committees, legal office, data protection officer are comfortable with data transaction foreseen by the clinical trials themselves. So our group has been involved in two use cases, the IoT and the eConsent. Please just let me say that it has been a great work with the PharmaLedger team and the different expertise, and we enjoy a lot to work with the different expertise of the project. Trying to give a critical reading and trying to identify a kind of a lesson learned from the implementation of these two use cases, we believe that the main point to focus on could be the following. So, the importance to have a multidisciplinary approach. So all the stakeholders' voices should be represented. The patient participation, the final beneficiary of a clinical trial, of course, are the patient. And we should actively engage them in their overall process, starting from the very beginning. Regulatory, ethical issue, and data privacy are very important. Dealing with new technology and dealing with the world of clinical trials that are areas that are highly governed by precise and specific rules, we must consider very carefully regulatory and ethical issues as well as data privacy and all the requirements that the GDPR has recently brought. And then sustainability after the end of the project. These aspects has to be considered from the very beginning. So let's start with the multidisciplinary approach. When we move in the context of implementing a new tool or a new technology, especially as said in the framework of a clinical trial, we need to consider from the very beginning the active involvement of different stakeholders, especially because those figures could speak different languages, and it is not always straightforward to understand each other's needs. Who are those stakeholders? First of all, the patient, and having a real patient representative could help a lot in the project. Healthcare professional, researcher, principal investigator, or other professional figures working at the hospital clinical site where the research is taking place, it's extremely important. In the hospital, when we move within a very well-defined context with its own infrastructure, for example, the IT infrastructure, it's very important to deal also with all these professionals working in this environment. Another challenging stakeholder is the data protection officer. Considering then the fact that ethics committee and IRB should approve the clinical study, having their perspective and insight from the very beginning is extremely important. And similarly, the regulatory authority that has to ultimately approve the technology, or even just in the framework in which we test this technology, will certainly have some requirements that need to be considered right away. To deliver robust healthcare service improvement, it is essential that health information technology solution be designed by considering three core pillars of healthcare quality: clinical effectiveness, patient safety, and patient experience. These require multidisciplinary team to design intervention that both adhere to medical protocol and achieve the goal of effectiveness, safety, and experience. Tools such as, for example, the integrated patient journey mapping, intended to support the analysis of requirement as well as to promote empathy and the emerge of shared commitment and understanding among a multidisciplinary team, could be very useful. For example, this tool was used in a case study in the context of perinatal health, and this study demonstrates that tools like that could be extremely useful in order to allow the team members to consider the goal, the task, the constraints, and actor involved in delivery of this journey. Talking about patient, which are the elements that we should considering? First of all, specific patient characteristics. In our case, for example, we have to deal with the pediatric patient, so we have to deal with very specific requirement. This category is very fragile. They are not always able to provide their consent, considering their age, and this means that we need to involve also the parents or the legal representatives in all the path. As said, the tool of patient journey maps could be very useful. We need to consider all the patient's need, and we are developing, when we are implementing a new technology, the patient feedback is extremely important to test, as said from the very beginning. And also, there should be always a balance between what we are trying to develop, what we are trying to achieve, and the rules that we need to apply with the final user acceptability. Very important to bear in mind is that if the new technology involve, for example, minors, as in this case, it is mandatory to have on board professionals who used to deal with them and have clear the different process and the different scenarios. As said, regulatory, ethical issue, data privacy represent very important aspect to consider. Regulatory agency, having them on board could be very important. In the framework, for example, of the clinical trial applying the blockchain technology, it could be considered, for example, to interact with the EMEA or with the national competent authority, also with the tool of the scientific advice procedure, which provide a very early engagement between the researcher and between the regulatory body. We need to consider ethical issue. Digitals somehow can divide. Enrollment always poses some criticism. We need to have flexibility to address different cultural background, and we need to have confidence to manage information exchange. And then the big chapter of data privacy and GDPR. As said, engaging early dialogue with data protection officer is extremely important. In the framework of blockchain and GDPR, we need to identify the role of the parties, distinguish between the public and the private blockchain. Right to be forgotten has to be considered, as well as privacy by design. And then, last but not least, we have to consider that research projects as those one in that one in which we are moving should go hand to hand with product development. For that reason, planning procurement activities during the project is key, and also expertise to do so is key. An appropriate business plan should be also considered to make technology available after the end of the project. Thanks a lot. And then I give back the floor to Martin. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to open the floor now to the Q&A. Hopefully you've all been posting your questions in Slido. We'll take the questions in the order of most voted for, and we'll try and get through as many questions as we can in the time we have available. If we don't get to them all, then you can always reach out to us via the PharmaLedger website if you want to find out more information. So let's jump into the first question, which was asked during Baldwin's presentation, I think. When will we see these solutions come to market? Baldwin, would you like to kick us off with this one?
So yeah, I can answer it to some extent. Just to clarify, what we've shown you is really a prototype of our solution based on the key things that we were trying to work out. But we all also know that clinical trials, the environment of a clinical trial is very complex, and there are many other aspects of what we do that could be incorporated. So I just want to preface that to say it's a prototype, what we have, and I think there's more development that needs to occur. And maybe I can lean on Xenia as part of the leadership team in PharmaLedger to speak to the solution coming to a market, because this project will presumably move on for further development.
Sure, Xenia,
Yes,
the wider point?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much, Baldwin. Yes, as part of the continuation and sustainability of the PharmaLedger project, okay, the PharmaLedger Association has been created. Now it's under pre-registration for potential associates, okay, and it will start in January 1st. All the use cases in PharmaLedger, including the ones, okay, that are for the clinical trial management, okay, will pass to the pipeline to the association to be fully developed. So right now it's in prototype stage, okay. We are finalizing now the full mock-up and technical testing of how the blockchain is working, and also we're starting the evaluation with patients, and with partners also, to actually see for the usability and potential acceptance and all the changes that are needed to actually go through a pre-qualification stage of the developments, and then get it to the market when the PharmaLedger Association is ready. Okay, that it'll be at the beginning of next year when the PharmaLedger project ends. So this is the next plans and the next steps. Okay, following the PharmaLedger project. Okay, and following the sustainability of the results that have been created, which are all, by the way, all open source.
Super, thank you, Xenia. Okay, moving on. Our next question, again, I think this is for Baldwin, if you can kick us off. Who supplies the patient DIDs? Will this come from a regulatory body or healthcare authority, or will the patient have their own?
This is a really great question. In this project, this research project, we're really dabbling with the idea of incorporating a DID. We also looked into verifiable credentials, which we didn't get as far along in terms of development. So in this project, the DIDs were generated through our system, but looking forward, I could envision that for those countries that have implemented some sort of digital verification or digital identity, that this can come through them, either a health authority or some government body that provides these identities. And so they could be part of a blockchain network, for example.
Okay, super. Thank you. Our next question, which again might be for you, Baldwin, or for Todd. Does the eConsent solution fulfill legal requirements? As far as I know, in some countries, consent must normally be given in actual handwriting.
So I can take a stab at that, and Todd, if you want to add to it. So you're right. You're absolutely right. We took that into consideration because we know that some countries still require handwritten signatures, wet ink. So the solution that we showed you in the demonstration goes through an electronic consenting methodology. We've also built in the ability for that document to be printed out and hand signed. So that's taken into consideration in our prototype. Todd, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did go through that pretty quickly during the demonstration, but yes, there is a way that you can download the document and then go ahead and print that out locally and then sign it. So yeah, I agree with you, Baldwin.
That's a good question.
Super, thanks guys. Following on from that, the next question is the actual patient data saved off-chain, since blockchain typically is not that efficient in handling large amounts of data? If so, on whose infrastructure? Todd, Baldwin, maybe this is another one for you.
I could take a shot at it. You know,
yeah,
I know that to promote the previous webinar that we had, you could go back and look at Marco and Seneca, and they'll go in detail about the blockchain and the open DSU. And the DSU is the data sharing unit that we store, or at least the IoT device. So you're right. It's too much information to put on a blockchain. So we definitely want to keep that into a more efficient way to store it. So the open DSU is where that the IoT data is being pushed there. Blockchain, Baldwin mentioned when he was going through that the eConsent is being written to the blockchain. There are certain references that we also can write to the blockchain in the background that are related to the IoT data, but you're correct. The IoT data is not on blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Just to comment also to that and to support also the GDPR privacy regulation. Okay, the data is owned by each of the ones that is the generator. So when, for example, the consent is generated at the hospital, okay, the consent remains in the repository there. Data that is coming maybe from mobiles from the patients, it will be in their mobiles or in their PCs or in their storage, okay? The same for the IoT platforms. So actually the data is always at the owner's repository. It works like a totally decentralized and it's just connected through the blockchain. And actually it's hashed to have the timestamps when the data is generated. Also, when for example, reports are generated. So they are always at the owner's repository, and to link and support interoperability of data in the case of these use cases. Okay, I mean, this use case has eConsent, has personalized medicine and IoT. So there are 3 use cases in one that work like a plug and play. So it can be used by modules, but it can be used in a fully integrated manner. So that means that the repositories are always linked to the repositories, not only of the owners, but they also can be matched and interoperable. And for this, we have used something that is called data adapters to actually also make sure, for example, when some historic data from hospitals might not be compatible with the standards or with HL7, which is mostly the standard that we have used. Okay, the data adapters help you to get to the standard. So and actually, it's not only to the repository, but it's standardized.
So I just wanted to add to that because there's a number of other questions around data and storing data on blockchain. And just to clarify, typically you don't want to store the actual data on the blockchain because one, it's too big, and there's a security issue. So as I mentioned, blockchain is essentially a ledger of transactions. So it's actually the transactional data that goes on the blockchain and not the data itself. As Xenia said, that data could sit somewhere else in the secure cloud, for example. So that security is managed that way. I hope that answers the question.
Also, one more
Super.
thing. So actually, when data is not in the blockchain and in the repositories, but you only hash, okay, then we are able to respect that when the people say that they do not consent to use their data anymore, then, okay, from that point, that data is not used anymore. So actually, it's not, I mean, it's not fully there in the blockchain. So actually, the right of to be forgotten can be used, okay, in this case.
Super. Okay, I think we've got time for one last question. And it is, can you share which layer one chain you're using for your pilots? And also, who would be the best point of contact for partnership inquiries? Xenia, do you want to tackle that?
Yes, you can get us through contact@ PharmaLedger.eu, okay, and actually through our website, and we are quite responsive through that, okay, and actually you can get to anyone in the use cases, okay, in through that email, just in case is needed as such.
Okay, are you able to answer about the layer one chain? Was that more for Todd and Baldwin?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to fully read. I'm able to answer about them.
Todd or Baldwin, do you know which layer one chain we're using for our pilots?
So I think they're referring to the blockchain network that we have decided to continue with. I don't know if you want to provide more information. So we were discussing about Quorum and Hyperledger. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you have more information to that end. Yeah.
So for the pilot, we built it on Quorum.
Super.
I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Baldwin. Much appreciated. Which is, will the blockchain eConsent solution be a standalone solution that you will be creating, or will it just be an integration into existing eConsent solutions? Todd or Baldwin, would you like to take this one first?
Hi, Martin. Maybe I can answer that. And Todd, if you want to jump in, please go ahead. So what we showed you was a prototype that we developed over the last almost 2 years now. And it incorporates an eConsent solution. What would be really beneficial for the industry, I think, is to be able to do both. Have a solution that we would create for eConsent, but also to be able to integrate any other solutions that are commercially available. So right now, it's a prototype that contains an eConsent solution, but I imagine in the future it would be good to be able to integrate external eConsent solutions as well. Todd, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we were developing this, we did develop it separately, and then later on, we decided that it makes most sense to go ahead and pilot it together. So yeah, I could see this being marketed separately as well.
Super. Okay. Actually, I have a follow-up question for you guys, which is, will your use cases be carried on to the PharmaLedger Association?
Well, we certainly hope so. We've worked quite hard on this, and I think we have a good foundation for the development. And maybe Xenia can speak to this. I don't know if she's online.
I think we're having a few technical difficulties with Xenia at the moment, so.
But I would imagine that it would be carried forward. It's one of the use case streams as a combined use case to move forward, I think.
Yeah, I could say that we're doing all the documentation, cleaning up all the documentation, getting it ready to hand over. So if they do continue on with it, then yes, everything will be ready that we've actually developed and documented to this point.
Okay. The next question is, do patients have the option to download all or part of their data and store it at home? And could this be considered a security risk? From your points of view, Todd and Baldwin, what's your take on that?
Well, again, what we designed is a prototype, and the data that would come in would not necessarily be stored by the individual. At least that's my understanding of how we're building this. But I am aware that there are other solutions out there where ideally in the future, if you think about Web3 concept, patients would be able to retain their data on their own, maybe in a personal cloud or something like that. So I can sort of see a vision for where this can happen.
Okay. All right. The next question is, how long do you retain patient data for, and how do you ensure it's well protected from cyber attacks in the long run? Baldwin, do you want to try this one?
Yeah, I can maybe speak to it a little bit. I'm going to lean on maybe Todd and Xenia as well. So I think that patient data retention is as we would typically follow, depending on regulations. And the beauty of blockchain is that it can help us to really manage that, because it is based on transactions and rules like that. You can really enforce the retention of the data and when you can get access to it. How do we ensure it's well protected from cyber attack in the long run? I think it depends on how that data is stored and where it's stored. So, for example, if it's stored in an encrypted cloud and protected by some sort of identity management efforts, then I think that can ensure the long-term security of it. And also, blockchain can also manage the access to that data depending on the time that it was set for its access. I don't know if I really answered that question, but Todd, did you have any thoughts to that as well?
Yeah, you know, I guess I'm not an expert in that particular area, but I know that we do have at least the IoT data stored in an OpenDSU location, so that is secure, and then that's replicated, you know, throughout the nodes. But you know, for the security and the technical background, I probably would have to refer to at least some of our technical support team.
I also would like to comment on that. Okay, as for the data, okay, right now in the project, okay, and we have a data management plan and actually security for the data and actually is stored in some local repositories. But when this scales, okay, actually the data, it will be stored by the owner. That means, okay, that each of the owners, let's say the hospitals, okay, they have their own security area, okay, or security processes, as well as retention processes that they will respect for health data. The same if it is the sponsor of the clinical trial, and the same it would be if it is the patient. As the patient will have and store their own data, is the patient and every stakeholder who is will be in charge of the security of their data, as they currently do any other data that they own. As for the blockchain, what we have in the chain is the hashes that really links to the data, and all those hashes for sure have big security around the architecture of the PharmaLedger. And besides that, okay, everything is encrypted, okay, and linked through encrypted processes in the DSUs as such. But when this, when this is replicated and scaled to the real life, okay, each of the owners will host their data in their own premises, okay, and they follow the same processes like they follow today as hospitals and sponsors, etc.
Super. Thanks for that, Xenia. Glad we can hear you now. Okay, our next question is, when will you have results from the pilot study? Baldwin, I think this was for you.
So the pilot study ended, I think, last week. So we're very excited about that. So it's going to take us some time to compile all the data. And so hopefully we should have a readout in December, if not then in early next year. And Xenia's team is really closely involved in that, and maybe she can add to that as well. But we're very excited that it's completed.
Yes, actually we are. So actually it probably be at the beginning of December when we have the results together. It will take us 2-3 weeks to process them.
And how will those results be shared?
The results will be shared, okay, through our website as such, okay, and actually they will be promoted also, some of them through our social media, okay, and actually they will be shared, okay, when in the finishing of the project does in December, the consolidation of the results, plus at the beginning of next year, okay, when the results are transferred to the PharmaLedger Association, which is the organization to continue with all the outcomes of the project as such, and to take alive, okay, what the project has performed.
Okay, super, thank you. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Data on a blockchain, even encrypted by security experts, are treated as high risk. What do you plan to use or implement to reduce such risk? Xenia, do you want to tackle this one?
Okay, and right now there are 6 nodes, okay, well, 7. One is PharmaLedger project, okay, and 6 are in pharmas, and the ones in pharmas are in premises, okay, and yes, we're working with that. Right now, the people that is entitled to have the nodes, the people that is participating in the project as such, since we're preparing it for be launched alive, and one is it is alive, okay, you can take part as PharmaLedger Association, you can register as a member there, and as a member of PharmaLedger Association, you will be able to get through the different projects or to the different activities, okay, that will be there to develop areas or let's say proposals and projects in blockchain under this architecture, and then mostly anyone, okay, that will be in these processes, okay, will be able to have a node, or for sure under certain conditions, okay, of the registry, but most of the stakeholders, okay, that will be part of PharmaLedger.org in the live version, okay, will be able to sustain the node.
Super. Okay, thank you very much, Xenia. I think that's us out of time in terms of the Q&A. So thank you for all your questions. Sorry we've not been able to get through them all. You can check out our YouTube channel to see this and our previous webinars. And you can visit the PharmaLedger website to keep up to date with the exciting next developments for the PharmaLedger Association and the project itself. As this is the very last webinar in the series, I would like to thank all of our speakers that we've had over the last 3 years, and to our audience for following us all of that time as well. And a special thanks to Go Viral Digital, who've produced such excellent webinars for us. Their technical support has been fantastic. If you can complete the end of webinar survey on Slido before you go, that would be much appreciated. But for now, thank you and goodbye.